Hey guys, how we doing? Mr. Kavanaugh here. Hey, I just wanted to go over a few notes with you, the notes I submitted this morning, just to give you some clarity to them from Federalism, specifically grants in aid. Grants in aid, really just to boil it down, what grants in aid is money flowing from the federal government to the states and local government. Really just to break it down simply, grants in aid is money that flows from the federal government to the states and local governments. So remember that. Just going back over the notes I sent you, we start to see large budget surpluses in the late 1800s. That leads to the passage of the 16th Amendment in 1913. And as we all know, the 16th Amendment is graduated income tax. So in a sense, the more you make, the more you pay, like me, being in LeBron's league. So I get taxed to death. Oh my gosh. 16th Amendment is actually one of the part of the progressive amendments that we talked about. The other three amendments, 17th, 18th, 19th. 17th, just to refresh, 17th Amendment, which you need to remember these all for the AP exam, which is still a go. A little side note, I've read that they may try to do the exam at the end of May, and I read some stuff the other day, they may try to do it online. So it still remains to be seen, but you should be prepping as if it is still on in early May. So the AP exam is still a go. You need to know these amendments for the exam. So 16th Amendment, graduated income tax. 17th Amendment, direct election of senators. Recall how senators were originally picked. They were chosen by their state legislatures. 18th Amendment, prohibition. And 19th Amendment, women's suffrage. Universal right for women to vote in all elections, especially federal elections. 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th. So states start receiving this money early on. And they design their state budgets around this money that's flowing to them from the federal government. Initially, they consider it to be free money. And so they get hooked on this money. States become hooked on this money, like an addict, if you will. And so by the 1960s, we see a shift by the federal government to start attaching strings to this money. And this becomes known as federal activism, where we're going to give you the money, but now we're going to attach some strings and we want something in return, which is a whole nother debate because technically it's our money, but I don't have enough battery power to go and debate all that. So states are hooked on federal government money, and their whole state budgets are designed around this money. In many cases, still to this day, especially certain states. So federal activism is now when the federal government, they start to place demands on the states. State and local governments dependent on federal funds. Types of grants that you need to be familiar with. Categorical grants. They're for a specific purpose, specific category, like highway funds. This money can only be used for highways running through your state. And in some cases, there are strings attached to get this highway money. Sometimes the federal government will hold this money over a state's head to get the state to do what it wants. Block grants are general purpose grants, and there are a few restrictions on these. So states naturally prefer block grants because in most cases there are no strings attached. So that's pretty simple. Mandates. Remember mandates. It's a requirement that the state perform certain functions to get the money. In many cases, they're what are called unfunded mandates. You're only going to get the money later on. Certain examples of mandates are states must adhere to environmental issues, like Indiana must help clean up Lake Michigan. States must implement motor voter registration, which for some reason motor voter registrations, it's always on the AP exam. Motor voter registration, it's when the government implemented, when you go into the license branch to renew your license or get a license, you can register to vote at the license branch. Or No Child Left Behind, which was an educational program implemented by the federal government. And for states to get this federal money, they had to meet certain testing or have to meet certain testing requirements to do this. These are types of mandates. To get this money as well, as we approach the census, which you need to remember this, the census, as I put in my notes this morning, I believe, the census is required constitutionally. Every 10 years, we need to count our numbers. This determines how much money a state will receive because of population, and it also determines the House seats. How many House seats a state will get. House seats are apportioned, meaning House seats are determined by population. So as we all know, Indiana has 9 House seats. A while back, an older census, Indiana went through what was called a brain drain. It was during the tech boom, and a lot of individuals who were graduating from Rose-Hulman, and yes, dare I say, that school, in the Northwest, Purdue, boiler down, represent right there. There you go, Mariah. No, great school. Seriously, Purdue is amazing. But a lot of these individuals, the tech degrees, there was nothing here for them, so they went to Silicon Valley, California, and the Silicon Valley of Boston, Massachusetts. We lost a lot of our number in Indiana, so we actually lost a House seat. But the House numbers are capped at 435, and so somebody gained a House seat. So the census numbers are very important. Taking a good census, especially for the money for the states and to determine House seats. The census is required by the United States Constitution. It is required. Back to devolution, or devolution, as some say. Devolution, devolution. We saw this in the 1980s, beginning under let's go with, it could have been before that. Let's go with President Reagan, though. So really, Reagan really pushed, and Reagan and the Reagan Republicans really pushed devolution, if you will. Let me close this because my battery is running low. So I want to wrap this up. We saw this shift from power from the federal government to the states. And we saw a lot of money now flowing to the states. Under Reagan Republicans, they felt the federal government was wasting too much money and the states could better spend this money. So you saw a shift in power and money to the states in the 1980s going into really to 2000 under devolution. And Reagan also had the Supreme Court's backing on this under the Rehnquist Court, Chief Justice William Rehnquist. A lot of the court decisions favor movement of power to the states. So the states receive tons of block grants. Why do states prefer block grants? Less strings attached. They can use it how they see fit. This all came to a screeching halt 9/11. It was just a vacuum of power back to the federal government naturally following 9/11. A couple of other things I wanted you to add to your terms. I don't recall if you had these on your term sheet or not, but are federalism terms you may see on the AP exam. Add them to your notes, please, or terms. One is a referendum. You hear that a lot in the news. A referendum, it lets voters vote on a measure adopted by the legislature. So a referendum lets voters vote on a measure adopted by the legislature. An initiative, a ballot initiative, allows voters to place something directly on the ballot. So an initiative or ballot initiative allows voters to place something directly on the ballot. Also be familiar with this term called recall. Some states allow for special recall elections. Probably the most famous recall election in history was the recall election of Gray Davis, former governor of California. And that's how Arnold Schwarzenegger ended up as governor of California, because they had a special recall election in California because the voters were upset with their governor, Gray Davis. So they had a special election and they elected Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator. We're going to terminate those taxes, California. And he became governor of California, which was a total freak show of an election. You had Arnold, you had Gary Coleman, what you talking about, Willis fame. You had some porno star. I mean, they all came out of the woodwork. And then, you know, all those guys who live at home with their parents who have Terminator posters down in their basement bedrooms and down there playing Xbox and their Cheeto-stained wife beaters, they all came out and voted for Arnold, and the most famous recall election, really, I say in history, but I'm probably wrong. So that's all I have right now regarding those notes I gave out this morning. There's something else I wanted to touch on, and I am drawing a blank because my brain is kind of fried. Let me think about it. I can't think about it. I will get back to you guys. I hope everybody is doing well. Let me know if you need anything. Keep working, keep studying, keep reviewing. Look at those infographics, which should be up to date. I've been looking through some of your squads. Again, some of your squads are a little slim shady. Clean it up a little bit, or there could be penalties. Get back to me if you need anything. Stay safe. Miss you guys. I will talk to you soon.